Okay, so today we are going to discuss decoding your baby's heart rate during labor and delivery. This is a follow-up video in which I talked about a couple of days ago, mother's contraction patterns and why contractions are important during labor and delivery, and understanding how those contraction patterns will play out on the electronic fetal heart monitor. And from that video, I had a lot of other questions offline. And so one of the questions dealt with understanding or talking about a baby's heart rate. And so I'm going to get into that today, and I'm going to discuss it from a medical legal standpoint. And this is going to be in the context of a baby suffering a traumatic brain injury at birth. And that traumatic brain injury is HIE, or hypoxic ischemic encephalopathy. If you are new to this journey, or you're new to this type of injury, in its basic form, HIE is a reduction or cutoff of oxygenated blood, which can lead a baby to suffer this traumatic brain injury. And so understanding during labor and delivery, understanding the baby's heart rate can go a long ways when we are trying to help families understand what may have caused their baby's brain injury. And so for today, I'm going to discuss 3 of the most common patterns that we see when a baby is hooked up to the electronic fetal heart monitor, and that monitor is going through and is helping doctors and nurses understand in real time things like the baby's heart rate, things like mom's contraction patterns, things like whether there's late decelerations or accelerations, variability. These types of things are all included in the readings from the electronic fetal heart monitor. Now, getting back to that idea of your baby's heart rate, what we generally want to see is in the normal range. And a normal range, a baby's heart rate is going to range from about 110 to about 160 beats per minute. Now, within that time frame, you may have some times in which the heart rate goes a little bit above the 160 or goes a little bit under the 110. And as long as if it goes in either direction and it's not there for too long, it returns back into that normal range, that's going to be good. And this is what we can see, this pattern right here on the board. This is good. This is about 130. This is good. This is what you want to see. When we see this pattern, this means more than likely everything is going pretty good for the baby. Now, this assumes that there's no issues with variability and there's no, late decelerations or things like that. But if we're in this area, that's going to be good. The second pattern that we will see is called fetal bradycardia. Fetal bradycardia occurs when the baby's heart rate is below 110 beats per minute. And fetal bradycardia, that can be very problematic if this is allowed to go on for too long. On the board, as you can see, this is the baby's heart rate as it's being charted out on the electronic fetal heart monitor. You see this is in the 100s, it's dipping down into the 90s or maybe high 80s, and then it's going back up. This is going to be fetal bradycardia. This is an example of it. There can be multiple causes of fetal bradycardia. The first one being that I'm going to talk about is umbilical cord compression. I've got a whole video that deals with umbilical cord compression. So go back on my page and look for the contraction video that's dealing with the cord compression and things of that nature. So it's a whole video that goes into more depth on that. Also, uterine rupture, that can also lead to bradycardia, fetal bradycardia, and of course, fetal distress. Anytime these things are present, this is something that doctors have to pay close attention to, because if this goes on for too long, fetal bradycardia, if it goes on for too long, then that can be a sign that there may be some oxygen-related issues for the baby, and that the baby could be having problems. The third and final pattern that we're going to talk about is tachycardia, fetal tachycardia. We've already covered when the heart rate is too low. Now we're going to get into when the heart rate is too high. Fetal tachycardia is usually going to be at 180 beats per minute and higher. If your baby's heart rate is there, again, for a considerable amount of time, this is an example of problems for the baby. There could be multiple causes also for fetal tachycardia. Number one being, of course, maternal fever. If mom is dealing with a fever, then of course that can lead a baby in some instances to be dealing with tachycardia. In addition to that, if the baby has an infection, fetal infection, that also can in some instances lead to a baby dealing with tachycardia, and of course fetal distress. Now, I'm going to put all this together because when you see these patterns, when we're helping families try to understand, okay, Mr. Boston, what caused this? Why did my baby have this traumatic brain injury? We are looking and we are reviewing the electronic fetal heart monitor. We're looking at these strips because these strips can give us a good way to be able to put the pieces of the puzzle back together to understand what may have been going on with labor and delivery. If these types of patterns, bradycardia and tachycardia, if they are going on for too long and they fail to either diagnose it, they fail to notice, they do not take the appropriate actions based on what they're seeing. If this goes on for too long, then the baby, and it is an oxygen-related issue that is causing these types of patterns, then that baby can suffer a traumatic brain injury. And remember what I said earlier, HIE in its basic sense is a reduction or a cutoff of oxygenated blood, which can lead a baby to suffer a traumatic brain injury. So again, it is imperative that when these types of patterns, when they are on the monitor, when they present themselves, that doctors notice them and that they move in the right direction. So, to be able to lessen the chance of a baby suffering a traumatic brain injury.